We've lost something, but we're not quite sure what it is. We realize that the Christianity today is a shell of its former self. It doesn't have the compelling spiritual power that it did, that we read about in the Bible. And in fact, I've been reading through the Gospels, which, if you read through the Gospels directly, I think that a lot of Christians have lost this, that we get our Bible teaching from church or from Bible study groups. And what do they always do? What does every church, at least every church that I've gone to, and every Bible study group do? Well, they pick and choose specific verses. Oftentimes, they'll pick like 3 verses, and then they'll match it to 3 verses from another book, and they'll make some larger point. Well, what ends up happening then is that you lose the context. You lose the overall story. You lose the overall narrative. And the things that are more difficult to explain just get conveniently left out because it's hard to make a sermon around those. But if you just read it straight through, just read the Gospels straight through, you find so much amazing stuff that you're like, wow, I didn't even know that was in there. Some of the most interesting is about the spiritual power that we as Christians are supposed to have. Where, for example, when Jesus heals the woman that touches his robe, well, I say when Jesus heals her, but he does not attribute it to himself. The woman is healed, and he says what? He says, I healed you. No, he doesn't. He says, your faith has healed you. Your faith has made you whole. And he said that same phrase multiple times to multiple different people. He also said, whenever you pray for something, believe that it has already happened and so it will be. He also said that faith the size of a mustard seed, with faith the size of a mustard seed, you can tell this mountain to jump in the sea and it will do it. He says that people will recognize that you are truly my disciples by the fact that you can heal diseases and you can cast out demons from people. Now, I don't know about you, but none of the churches I've gone to have ever healed anybody or cast demons out of anybody that I've ever seen. With one exception, I should say. With one exception, and that was a rather strange Pentecostal service that I went into. Now, I have very little experience with the Pentecostal movement, but it seems to me that they're at least trying to be on the right track. Whether or not they are, I don't know. Like, I hear a lot of criticism of Pentecostals, and I don't know how much is true and how much is not, but at least they recognize that these gifts are real and that they can have them. And I believe that may be the main thing that's missing from Christianity today, is that we've lost the spiritual power that we are supposed to have as disciples of Christ. Now, why exactly that is, I'm not entirely sure. We can speculate on that. I think that it probably is by design. I mean, I think a lot has just been lost to history, and especially when it comes to, well, the vast majority of people have very little faith. The vast majority of people, even if you quote the Bible to them directly, like that verse I just quoted to you about, like, believe that you will, whenever you pray, believe that you will receive it and you'll get it. And you quote that verse to a Christian, and they'll try to qualify it. They'll say, oh, well, if God thinks it's the right time for you, then yeah, I guess maybe. Right? They won't even Christians, even the most dyed-in-the-wool Christians, will not accept their own Bible at face value. They have to qualify it because it's just so difficult for them to believe that might be the case. And so it kind of creates this feedback loop that makes it rather difficult because, and just for sake of clarity, I haven't done any amazing miracles. Like, I haven't figured this out. So take my opinion with a grain of salt here. But it seems to me that interesting kind of fruit there. I don't know what that is. Walking here in the park. It seems to me that when you live in a society, in a culture where you never see these things happen, and even the people that are supposed to believe it don't, it's very difficult for you to believe it. And so it's very difficult for you to muster that mustard seed of faith that you need to be able to believe that. And so that's why we're kind of stuck in this situation. And it reminds me of the story when Jesus walked on the water and Peter said, "Oh, that looks cool. I want to do that too." I may be paraphrasing this a little bit. Those are probably not his exact words. But anyway, Jesus invites him out and says, "Okay, go ahead and walk on the water." And guess what happens? He does it. Peter successfully walks on the water. What happens next? Well, he starts looking around him, starts looking at the big waves and the wind, and he gets afraid. His faith slips. He loses his faith and he falls into the water. He sinks into the water. He's lost this ability because he has lost his faith. The reason that Peter was able to walk on the water was because he had the faith that he could walk on the water. Now, why was he able to have that sort of faith in something that seems highly improbable? Because he watched somebody else do it first. He watched Jesus do it first, and Jesus gave him the assurance that he could do it too. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen anybody walk on the water. I've never seen anybody cast out demons. Well, that's not entirely true, actually, but maybe I'll get into that later. But a lot of this stuff, I've never seen anybody do. And you've probably never seen anybody do either. You don't have a mentor. You don't have a reference. You've never seen it done. All you've read is these stories from thousands of years ago. And so for you to have the faith to be able to even attempt it yourself is rather unlikely. So I think what it's going to require for this to come back is it's going to require, first of all, for us to recognize that it is in fact possible and to create a culture around this, which I already see changing, by the way. I already see this happening. I see the spirituality starting to seep back into religion, into Christianity. My impression of Christianity these days is it's very it's dry. It's almost dead. It's like been completely, the life force has been removed from it because the spiritual underpinning has been removed from it. You know, so many people these days, if they believe in spiritual things, they will, what do they say? They say, "I'm spiritual, not religious." That's kind of weird, isn't it? It's because the spirituality has been so removed from religion, even though that is the basis of religion. That is the life force of religion. That's what religion is. But now it's just become this empty shell of traditions that has no life force left. And so the people that actually do find spiritual truth, for example, tell somebody in your church that you talk to spirits. See what they tell you. Are they supportive? I doubt it. If you have any spiritual experience at all, they will either think you're crazy or they'll tell you it's demons. Everything's demonic. It's Satan. No matter how good their fruit, right? Jesus said that you shall know them by their fruit. If you talk to spirits that help you and make your life better and help you to love your neighbor better and remind you of the teachings of Jesus, well, just the fact that you're having any spiritual experience at all, that all goes out the window. The fruit goes out the window. It's just, oh, spirits are bad. And that's it. Again, with possible exception occasionally for the Pentecostals, although they seem to be rather like narrow-minded in their interpretation of this. It's like you can, yeah, I'm not entirely sure, because having a spirit speak through you in the book of Acts is called prophecy, right? And I think that to some extent, Pentecostals recognize this. When we say prophecy, we're talking about normally, in just our normal Western modern vernacular, when we say prophecy, we're talking about people who can predict the future, the gift of predicting the future. But in the Bible, it doesn't mean that. It does sometimes, but that's not the meat of it. It's just being filled with the Spirit, as the Bible would say, and being able to know things or say things that are beyond your personal, individual comprehension. Well, what the spiritualists would call mediumship is exactly the same thing as what the Christians would call prophecy in many cases. Now, again, it seems like Pentecostals are the only one that believe that it exists at all. A lot of Christians' excuse is, oh, that happened a long time ago, but it doesn't happen anymore. So the type of evangelical Christianity that I grew up in, I refer to as almost atheism, because they have so little faith. They believe that God exists. They believe that Jesus exists, but they don't really do much of anything on the earth. And all of the stuff that happened, like all of the signs and wonders that God created that are talked about in the Bible, well, that was just a long time ago and doesn't happen anymore. So naturally, it makes sense that Christianity it feels weak and gay, powerless, dead, deprived of life force. That's the way it feels to me, and I think that's the way it feels to probably most of us. And it's probably the reason that so many people who are raised Christian eventually leave, because the substance has been sucked out. It's dry, it's dead, it's an old ruins of traditions that have lost the vital life force that propped them up. Now, I don't think this is a coincidence. I think that Satan and the forces of evil are very real. And again, as the Bible says, the God of this world, or the Lord of this world, the ruler of this world, is Satan. That our fight is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and spiritual darkness in high places. Well, this spiritual darkness in high places, well, we see it in the government, we see it in the education system, we see it in the media. It's pretty obvious that the followers of Satan are the ones that rule the influence centers of the world. Well, what is one of the most important influence centers of the world? The church. Of course, the church is extremely influential. So doesn't it stand to reason that the Lord of this world would want to have his influence in the church? Of course. Of course. So why is modern Christianity, weak and gay? Because it's controlled by the devil. The devil wants it to be weak and gay. So it has no power, has no ability to fight back against the Lord of this world. So this is going to always be a problem, and it's going to be a problem with every denomination. It's really easy to point the fingers at the Catholics and say, oh, look at all the child molesters in the Catholic Church. Well, yeah, exactly. That's just one manifestation of it, though. I guarantee you, the freaking rainbow flags in the Lutheran Church is the same agenda. It's the same principalities and spiritual darkness in high places. The evangelicals saying that, oh, the power of faith, you need to qualify it now. Faith doesn't have any power on its own. You can just ask God for stuff and he may or may not answer. Like, prayer doesn't have any power, according to these people. It's just, you ask God and he says yes or he says no. And, well, God is unchanging anyway, so is he going to change his mind because of your prayer? Of course not. Right? So, like, this is all a coordinated agenda, and I guarantee you, if you start a church, and I see this actually, because I believe that at least the best denomination, if you can call it that, of Christianity in terms of spirituality right now is Spiritism, based on the works of Allan Kardec in the 1800s, which is very big in Brazil. It's mostly unknown in the US, but I see the same thing happening with Spiritism. I see the people that are involved with Spiritism are turning the same direction. They don't have any faith. Their like version of Christianity explicitly says that we still talk to spirits and these wonders and miracles still happen with the power of faith, and yet they don't have any faith, right? So every denomination and group that wants to follow Jesus, that wants to do good in the world, that wants to be a force for good and fight the evil, is going to be a target. And so the forces of evil are going to find their way in. They're going to sneak their way in. And they're going to mess with the words and the definitions and the translations. They're going to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of the followers, and they're going to try to insert their own people into the leadership structures of these organizations. It is inevitable that this will happen, and so it is our responsibility, with the warnings given to us in the Bible, to watch out, to be vigilant, and to not allow this sort of negative influence into what should be a force for good in the world and the army of Jesus on earth. So I hope you found that interesting. If you like this video, you'd probably also like this one. I'll see you in the next one.